Ever wondered if your advertising dollar is really working for you? If your ad would have been here, you and more than 4 million people would be listening to it right now. Contact ads at xzoneradiotv.com.
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. I'm Rob McConnell, and from the world of ghosts, spirits, hauntings, and the unexplained. This hour on the X Zone, we journey deep into the mysterious shadows where reality and the supernatural collide. My guest this hour is paranormal investigator, researcher, and the creator of Miami Ghost Chronicles, Marlene Pellicer. For years, Marlene has explored haunted locations, investigated chilling encounters, and examined the stories behind ghostly phenomenon that continue to fascinate believers and skeptics alike. From intelligent hauntings and shadow figures to spiritual energy and unexplained encounters, her work dives deep into the mysteries many fear to discuss openly. This hour will explore the world of the paranormal investigation, the reality behind ghost stories, the evidence she's uncovered, and what may truly exist beyond the veil between life and death. So, Exo Nation, dim your lights. Keep an open mind and prepare for a journey into the unknown. I'm Rob McConnell, and this is the X Zone Radio Show on the CanCom Broadcast Network, the X Zone Broadcast Network, and our affiliates.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
When the midnight hour's calling and the world has gone to sleep, there's a voice across the darkness, digging mysteries buried deep. From UFOs to hauntings, ancient secrets carved in stone, there's only one place waiting. Welcome to the X Zone. From coast to coast, we're broadcasting across the USA and Canada too, with truth seekers and believers, bringing hidden stories through. Welcome to the X Zone, where the strange becomes the real. From ghosts and alien visitors to mysteries we can feel. The biggest names are joining us, sharing secrets still unknown, with Rob McConnell leading you into the X Zone.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X Zone, and yeah, like the song says, I am Rob McConnell, and I'm with you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and CanCom Broadcast Network. And here in Southern Ontario, you can actually listen to the X Zone on your car radio, your office radio, wherever you can bring a little radio to, including the great beaches that we have here in Niagara, just by tuning your radio to 1220 AM, that's CFAJ AM, and they also stream us around the world on classic1220.ca. X Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Marlene Pellicer. And Marlene, welcome back to the X Zone. And I have to ask you, for the many listeners who have just joined us recently on all the new affiliates that we've been able to join us, what sparked your fascination with the paranormal?
You know what? As a kid, kids get interested in strange stories and things like that.
Yeah.
And, but I never outgrew it. How's that? And then, little by little, I want to say like back in the 1980s and 90s, a couple of times people asked me to accompany them on strange stuff that was happening at their house. But it's not like what we see now with the paranormal shows. It was people that were really couldn't figure out what was going on in their house. Like they had ruled out all these things. And I'm kind of known for being, the calm person, when everybody's running. I'm like, what is that?
You're the rational person in the crowd.
I was the one that normally uh, let's like bring her along. She's gonna be the one that won't let us all like get flighty,
Right.
and I'm a good observer. Uh, and that's you get pulled into it. And then in the '90s, I joined a paranormal research group, and even then, it was more of a scientific approach. And a lot of times, we didn't immediately go to the supernatural. We were trying to debunk before it became such a well-known thing. And by this, I don't mean, but we realized, especially after you do this a while, that there's other things that could be causing things like this. But it's one of Rob, I want to say, it was little by little before you know it.
Hmm.
And like I said before, all social media and all the shows, you got known by word of mouth. You people within that circle
Right.
network,
Yep.
and that's how it worked out, mostly through networking.
But besides being the cool member of the gang who was rational and who, would ask questions like why instead of why the hell are we still here? Let's run. What was it
Right.
that brought you to the paranormal?
Looking back now, I had an experience when I was a teenager at a
Mm,
house that I lived at. It was a rented house. And by the way, I lived in that neighborhood for many years. So I knew it was an older couple. Their
yeah.
daughter grew up, moved away. The widow, he died, and they moved away. And we rented, me and my mom. And I had an experience where I would hear things moving around. One day that I stayed home from school, I heard stuff being moved around in the kitchen and footsteps. It was one of those wooden floors,
Hmm.
where they have a crawl space. So you hear when somebody's walking. And even then, I really didn't catch on. Later on, I realized that there was something going on. Plus, a couple of times at night, I would hear somebody walking around the yard, like on the grass. And now looking back, I realized that those were already encounters with probably, I think, the guy that used to live there. He was a nice man, but back then I didn't catch on. And then I became more interested in it as far as how much truth is in it. How's this? I wanted to believe, but I didn't want to just believe because everybody else was. As far as where people go into, besides the fascination, let's say with the folklore
Sure.
or ghost stories or anything, is like ultimately like what happens to us after we die.
Hmm.
And why are there such things as ghosts
Right.
versus, you know, that's it, that we're gone. Whether we like to or not, that's the end of us.
Your website is www.miamighostchronicles.com.
Yes.
What are the Miami Ghost Chronicles and what inspired you to create them?
Okay. Well, back again, this was in the '90s, and I had started working with a group, and I started getting, this was right, this is before social media, what it is not what it is now.
Hmm.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I want to say I was getting stories pre MySpace, for anybody that remembers what
Oh
MySpace
my
is.
gosh. Wow. That's a long time ago.
So, basically, it started out as I was getting emails from people telling me about their experiences. And then, like I said, besides working with that paranormal group, I mean, it's a foundation. People, believe it or not, there were a lot of people out there, Rob, that wanted to talk to somebody or tell somebody about their experiences. And it's not like it is now with all the shows.
Do you think the shows have been an asset or a curse to the paranormal
Oh, I,
investigation groups?
okay. How's this? Let
Okay.
me be kind here.
Okay.
I,
You don't
I
have to.
think
You know me.
No, no, I know. I think they're an asset in the sense that it's become more mainstream,
Hmm.
but it's become too mainstream,
Too
um,
commercialized?
to commercialize, to people. Like I said, since I was around before, people, by the time they got to the supernatural, they had discounted everything. They had already called an electrician or a plumber or,
Hmm.
a guy for an exterminator. They they try to discount it. Nowadays, they immediately go to the ghost thing or whatever. Immediately. And it's like, have you considered all these other possibilities? No, it's we're haunted. It's like, what happened? That kind of thing. Where before people were more like caught. In other
Hmm.
words, they didn't want that. They wanted to avoid being in a haunted house or living with ghosts or, the demon word. But so they would go through all these different things. And it was really funny because legitimately sometimes they had things happening And I would ask, how long is this? Oh, sometimes for years. And it just got to the point where something usually triggered an event where they realized they faced it, in other words. But nowadays, there's a ghost behind every door.
Yeah, that the old expression when I was a kid growing up was, there's always skeletons in the family closet.
Well, let me tell you, nowadays, it's, again, I tell everybody, they hear a weird noise and everybody, the entire family runs out and sleeps in the car because besides before, other people would like, I'm going to investigate, where's that
Sure.
noise coming from, or what's making that, or, what is that? And now nobody's like, oh, it's supernatural. It's like, yeah. And of course, all the movies. I just finished seeing this, the last one that came out from The Conjuring, that they're based on Ed and Lorraine Warren's experiences.
Oh, yeah, right.
The fourth one that was out, and I was watching it, and it started out fine, but then it just got so over the top. I was like, oh my God, wow. And it was incredible. I mean, and I know it's entertainment, but I know that it's just that so over the top, I guess, for someone that's actually done this.
I was just going to say that because you are somebody who actually knows what the truth in paranormal investigations is, instead of all the pomp, circumstances, and all the trick photography and special effects that goes into a TV show, whether it's a so-called a documentary or a reality show, which boggles my mind why any show on TV is called reality.
Yeah, I know. That's anything but.
Exactly. And you're right. People want to have the ghost behind the door. They want to have the paranormal experience because it gives them something to talk about. Like they're in the groove now, It's like the old days when we'd go surfing, hanging 10.
Well, you know what? I've found a lot of times in my experience, first of all, when you really do have something supernatural and there is something, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to use dangerous, but something malicious behind it and intelligent. It's usually very slow. It builds up, and it will, and if it's not addressed, it unravels people's lives. It does. It's not like that dramatic where things are flying across the room and things like that. You start having maybe nightmares, feelings of being watched, but it's very, I'm going to use a word which is insidious.
Yes, that's a good word for it.
It's not like what you see, like you go, from one day to the next and things, no. And it's much more frightening, it's much more troubling. It affects people's mental health. Sometimes there's a target person let's say it's a family.
Right.
And everybody thinks they're the crazy one because it only does it around that one person.
Stand by, my good friend. You and I have to take our break. And Exonation, Marlene Pellicer is our very special guest this hour. Her website, MiamiGhostChronicles.com. We'll both be back on the other side of this break as the X Zone continues right here on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, 1220 CFAJ AM, right here in St. Catharines, 1220 on the AM dial, or streaming us at classic1220.ca.
Bringing hidden stories through. Welcome to the X Zone, where the strange becomes the real. From ghosts and alien visitors to mysteries we can feel. The biggest names of joy. Where the mist rolls in from the river's bend, and the willow weeps for the long dead men. Cannon smoke and musket cries still echo under haunted skies. In the shadows by Queenston's hill, you can hear the marchers still. Drums of doom and bayonets gleam, awakening soldiers from their dream. They rise from the ground when the moon turns pale. ghostly eyes burning from the other side. Hear their boots on the cobblestone floor. The dead of 1812 march once more.
Welcome back, everyone. Marlene Pellicer is our special guest. We're talking to her about Miami Ghost Chronicles, as well as things that go bump in the night, the strange, the weird, the bizarre. Oh, that sounds like my family reunion. Sorry about that. But you must admit, Marlene, that people talking about the paranormal these days, like you alluded to before, everybody's got a paranormal story these days. And, like, here you go out, you do a credible investigation. How does it make you feel when you see all the hocus pocus and all the trash that is now available on TV, 724, 365, about the paranormal?
Well, what a lot of times people don't understand when these reality shows is that they have producers and people that vet stories and locations and everything. In other words, they leave out the boring investigations where nothing happens, or where you go to some place and you're looking at the people and going, oh no, even though you pre-interviewed them. Basically, all the heavy lifting is done behind the scenes. And a lot of times people get into ghost hunting and then they have like they realize, hey, this is not like the reality show. That kind of thing. So, but I'll tell you what, one thing that I wouldn't have said 20 years ago, and I don't know if you've seen this, Rob, that now they're looking at extraterrestrials maybe having some type of paranormal slant to them.
Oh, gosh, sure.
This is a first for me. It was like, okay, here we go.
Well, I think they're doing that because they have to find a new marketing niche. Now, not only are the extraterrestrials involved with ghosts and, interdimensional travel, multi-universes and so on, but now Bigfoot is being incorporated into the UFO community. Now, why it took so long for somebody to say, well, wait a minute, there has to be Bigfoot involved with UFOs. I saw Star Wars. I saw Chubby go, he's got to be in there somewhere. So there you go. Proof that Bigfoot is part of the UFO community.
Yeah, the jumping off point was Chewbacca.
Yeah, Chewbacca, that's it.
And you know what? I have heard that they say, well, let's, that there's upticks in sightings of UFOs and cryptids, the Bigfoot. But that was always, there was the ufologist on one side, and then the cryptids in the middle, and ghost off to the other side. And you know how they say, don't, all of a sudden they're all together.
Yeah.
Where people are saying that they have paranormal. In other words, they've sighted a UFO and they start having paranormal experiences at their house.
I feel sorry for respectful paranormal researchers and investigators and teams like yourself, because it's this woo-woo factor that is casting the dark shadow on everyone. Because once people realize, hey, wait a minute, it's not like it is on TV, so everything must be a hoax. Nobody's involved in true paranormal investigations, and that's where there's wrong, because there are a handful of paranormal investigators like yourself that are out there who bring credibility to the entire paranormal scenario. And it's these woo-woos kind of screw it up for everyone.
Well, getting back to, let's say, just strictly paranormal or ghosts or whatever.
Okay.
Like, I've come across a lot of people that they're kind of happy, like what you were saying, and I look at them and I go, especially if it is legitimate, because sometimes they just want it to be that way, and it's not. And I look, and I'm try to kind of tell them, this is not what you really want. Down the road, my experience is that this doesn't work out. And once they catch on, all right, especially when we tell them, look, we can, we could do something to move on, whatever's here, or if it's really severe, if maybe you need a house blessing, or they're like, no. Next thing you know, and we tell them, okay, this is our number. If you need us to come back, we'll come back, etc.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I guarantee you, if they can, they move, because it turns out that we were right when we were telling them this is not going to work out the way you want.
Is it possible that people who do not have a paranormal situation on their hands
Hmm.
that they want it so bad that it actually manifests itself?
Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. Yes. There's, have found, Rob, that you attract it. You attract it. In other words, let's say you move into a place
Okay.
and there is no paranormal or no ghost or nothing there, but you want to, like, and I'm sure maybe you've heard of this, people that are intent on capturing
Oh,
EVPs.
yeah.
They become obsessed with it.
Yep.
Same thing, where they're like, no, I have this, and you go there and you try to explain to them, look, there is nothing here. Not even, not even what they call, whether it's intelligent or something like a haunting that's not really an intelligent haunting. You don't have any, and they insist on it, and it gets to the point where they will attract these spirits, and usually they're not the good ones because they're basically putting out the invite because they want it so bad. And then you know what that saying is about be
Hmm.
careful what you wish for.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're inviting something to come into to be with them in their house. Which, by the way, is why a lot of paranormal investigators, they have to be really careful of not bringing stuff home with them, because when you're out there trying to make contact, with, let's say, on an
Hmm.
investigation, some of them really, they want to, they accept the invitation, they want to come with you. So that's
Wow.
why a lot of investigators have to be really careful with that.
Can you help me understand why people go to graveyards to do ghost
Oh,
investigating? Because number one, I think it's very disrespectful to go
yes.
to a place where people are resting in peace. And if I was a ghost, the day comes when I become a ghost, the
Mhm.
last place I want to be is in a graveyard.
Okay. As a matter of fact, you brought this up, and I'm going to give two scenarios.
Okay.
Number one, some cemetery. I know nowadays, I don't know if you've noticed, Rob, before cemeteries, unless they were, most of the time they were left open, not
Yes.
anymore. Now cemeteries are locked down, usually at sundown or
Hmm.
something, because I guess they have so many instances of people going in there when they're not
Trespassers. Yep.
supposed to, or vandalizing.
Hmm.
Okay. But what's happening is one of two things. For example, a lot of these, I was just reading about this. This is a big cemetery out in Philadelphia, which, by the way, I'm going to give this as an example, but could happen
Okay.
when people go legend tripping or going out to the cemetery. They found they found the motorcycle gang was dumping their bodies. They opened up a crypt because you
Oh,
remember these old cemeteries
yes.
where people would have mausoleums and
Yes.
crypts.
Yep.
It's not like now. They were dumping dead bodies. They opened up a crypt from 1888. They were dumping bodies in there. So basically, what I'm saying is you could run into a crime taking place or somebody getting rid of evidence.
Oh my
And
gosh.
here you are running around trying to get an EVP, and it's like you don't want to be there. That's one of the reasons why you have to be careful. Not only that, you could also run into people that sometimes are doing they're doing dark rituals, for lack of a better word.
Hmm.
And these people don't want witnesses. In other words, they don't want the legend tripper or the ghost hunter going, hey, that's another thing. Some of these people are not the best people, if you know what I mean.
I do.
All right. Those are legitimate concerns that sometimes people don't think of, besides the fact of you're trespassing. You might get the cops come pick you up. That's on the physical part, as like the reality. The other part is you, like what you're saying, the regular people that ghost, they're not going to hang out there. They're in heaven or wherever. They're not there.
Hmm.
But I will tell you, in my experience, a lot of dark rituals are conducted on in graveyards, and or ritual items, spell works, they're dumped there. Okay, they are dumped in there. So you might run into just really non-human entities there that were not, it's not somebody that was buried, in other words. This is something that was left in there. Either it was invoked through ritual in the graveyard, or sometimes the person that invoked them will leave the items, whatever they used, in there, almost like it's a binding, because and it's where whatever they left can't leave the cemetery grounds. Let me tell you something.
Certainly.
The darkest encounters that I know people have picked them up at cemeteries. Guaranteed. Yes, you have to be really careful. And I know people innocently just go there just to like, oh, let's go explore. Let's see if we hear anything.
Thrill seekers.
Thrill seekers, which I understand, but unless you really know how to protect yourself and you know what you're doing, besides the aspect of being in the wrong place at the wrong time because of the other things, you could bring something really dark with you into your life, and you picked it up at the cemetery.
A lot of people don't realize that trying to get a thrill may lead them into a life that they really had no idea that could exist because of the paranormal. And the same goes for people who go antique shopping and buy antiques. They can bring home an attachment. So how does John Q. Public, who decides to do a little bit of thrill seeking, besides going to Disney World and, having to mortgage his home in order to do that?
Yes, I know.
What do you suggest? Are there any rules that apply to people who want to become paranormal investigators? Or is it just common sense?
I would say if you really want to, first of all, to get a reality check, a lot of groups now, first of all, look for a group that's been established for a while.
Okay.
And it's got a good leader, no paradrama. And a lot of them now will allow you to do a ride-along, In other words, so you can accompany them and see what it's like. Maybe you don't engage, but you can see what happens.
Yeah, the same thing we used to do in the police force.
Yes, like a ride-along. And you can decide, hey, this is not for me, or it is. But again, I would say make sure you know that it's a good group that's been around for a while. And you get a flavor maybe by who the leader is and the members, if it's worth it.
Do your homework.
Yes, do your homework.
You and I have to take a break. Please stand by, my dear. Exo Nation, Marlene Pellicer is our special guest. www.miamighostchronicles.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this short break as we continue here in the X Zone on the CanCon Broadcast Network and your hometown radio Classic 1220, CFAJ AM 1220 on your AM dial, and streaming us around the world, classic1220.ca.
You can hear the marchers still, drums of doom and bayonets gleam, awakening soldiers from their dream. They rise from... Oh. Past midnight on Yates Street, the signal hums low. The static's alive and the shadows glow through the glass of the control room door. Something whispers, we've been here before. Old footsteps echo the real sighs. The red on air light flickers and dies through the hallway. A chill creeps deep. CKTB never sleeps. Ghosts on Yates Street.
Marlene Pellicer is our special guest, MiamiGhostChronicles.com. So, like I was saying before we went to the break, Marlene, people go to antique shops, they go to estate sales, they go to flea markets, and I really don't think that they give buying an article that may be attached by a certain spirit, that they could be bringing this spirit home with them. How can they prevent from doing that? I mean, besides not buying the product itself.
Well, I would say just listen sometimes to your instincts. That too good to be true.
Yeah.
Sometimes your body is a very good, how can I say, instrument when you come around something that doesn't feel quite right. But people get caught up, especially, I'm sure you've seen these curbside things where people leave stuff on the curbside.
Yes.
But let's say, okay, you bring it home. I would say bless it. First of all, don't bring it in the house. And bless it. I don't know if you have blessed oil. You can smudge it. You can have sprinkle holy water on it. And honestly, I would do that just about on everything, even if it doesn't give you a weird feeling, just to be on the safe side. And let me explain why. Let's say, but people don't understand that sometimes it doesn't have to be an actual haunting, but let's say that big leather easy chair that looks great was occupied. It was Uncle Sam's favorite chair that he had, and it's in great shape, but he was a very sick man.
Right.
But this was his favorite chair. So now the families put it on the curbside and they're like, hey, or a garage sale or whatever, right? Sometimes items become impregnated with that person that used it constantly. Okay. This is different from, let's say, let's say you've heard of people saying, oh, there was a spirit, let's say in a doll or something. We're talking where the physical feelings, especially if they're extreme, and unfortunately, pain or unhappiness or things are, for some reason, they impregnate either rooms or objects, especially if it's used a lot. So let's say you pick up Uncle Sam's chair and you bring it home, and this is in great shape. It's a beautiful leather chair. Wow. And somebody starts using it. And after a while, they might start feeling some of the symptoms, let's say in the case of this person, or it doesn't have to be physical. If it was somebody that was dealing with a lot of stress, sadness, maybe even depression. Okay, I'm not talking just of somebody that's, let's say, in a depression for years, or something that's very deep that you feel it. You might start picking up those symptoms off of that item, and you just don't understand why. And I'm sure you've heard of people that will say, I've gone to certain places and all of a sudden I'll get upset or mad, and I don't know why. Okay, because there's something that impregnated in the fabric of the place. You can't see it, but you sense it. Or sometimes, or people will say, this is just my imagination. Oh my, I'm not going to pay attention to that, because it makes them feel crazy to pay attention to their gut feelings about something. Or they realize, wow, I sat in that chair watching you for a couple of hours and now I feel like crying, or like, what's wrong with me?
So
Or I
they can
feel
actually
sick.
feel the difference in their psyche, and they
Oh,
feel as if you'll excuse the expression, they feel as if they're possessed by something.
exactly. But a lot of people don't want to go down that road. They don't immediately attribute it to, that was the chair, yeah, that I picked up. That's a great find or whatever. They don't make the connection. It takes a while sometimes for them to pick up, like, oh, wait a minute. Most people don't go there right away. As far as, let's say, like you were saying, something you got at a flea market or
Hmm.
garage sale, curbside, an estate sale. That's another thing. You'll find in a lot of these, I've heard some of these estate sales, Rob, where the person that was there, maybe if it's a deceased person that the families have, they themselves were collectors. They had items that they picked up in a lot of places, and you could come across some real funky items in there that just had something with them from when that owner bought them or picked them up. Sometimes other places in the world. Um, I had a case like that where I had a gentleman who was a merchant marine, and he had been all over the world and picked up a lot of pieces. And he got a house, brought them in. It was an older house, and we found that a couple of the items. But what happened was that before then, he had always kept them stored away. He was always waiting to have his own place, like a house. So he brought up, and he had been all over the world, and he had a lot of unusual pieces. And we found that a couple of them really, there was something. They were from other countries, if I remember correctly. There was something about them either done while it was being manufactured, which a lot of these things were handmade, custom made. In other words, it was unintentional, but it's still, or something was intentionally placed or attached to the item, which was dark, which is why he had things going on in the house.
What kind of things did he have going on in the house?
He started he started having um he started having electrical problems. This was an older home, but he had rewired it. It was
Right.
an older Florida home, and he had like a, I want to say it was like what they call utility room out here, which was detached. He started hearing things in the utility room, like going around. And at first he thought it was an animal, nothing. And then it moved from there into the house, uh, where he kept seeing like shadows. And by the way, he lived there by himself. I mean, he had friends come over, but he actually lived there by himself. So it wasn't like I could blame it on somebody else. He started then having, when you see something or somebody dart like out of your peripheral vision,
The shadow.
right? But
Yeah.
you know what? If I remember, it wasn't a shadow.
Oh,
It was
okay.
almost like with color. Like if you actually see a person,
Mm-hmm.
like if you actually see a person dart, let's say across a doorway,
Right.
like that, like, but there's nobody. Who could it be? I'm alone in
Mm-hmm.
the house. He started having those instances,
Good.
and then it got to the point where he started at one point feeling something like he says he would wake up, let's say all of a sudden in the middle of the night, and he would feel like something or somebody was staring at him from like a corner of the room, which of course is dark because you're sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that he felt it like it was like a presence. He couldn't make anything out, but it was a presence, and it just got darker. And he was, poor man, believe it or not, this was a very down to earth man. He wasn't like very, for lack of a better word, over imaginative.
Okay.
Where and he eventually called us in because he couldn't figure it out.
Is anyone fair target for spirits who have the intent on causing chaos in this person's life, or is there a special type of person? For example, a person that is a believer in the paranormal, or can the negative spirit actually infest the life of somebody who, by all means and stretch of the imagination, is strong-willed, physically strong, and not the kind of person that you think could be infected or possessed by a negative spirit?
I'll tell you what, Rob, there's people that I tell them either their boundaries have been damaged, they have mental health problems, addiction problems, or they're in very high stress, even if it's temporary. Tell them,
Wow.
you got to stay away from the paranormal. Stay away from it because you're going to become a target. Guaranteed. And I would tell them when we were doing cases of any of the members, they were either like getting, coming down with a cold,
Right.
doesn't have to be stress, or they were going through something stressful. We would tell them just like, don't come to the investigation because you just become more vulnerable. You become the vulnerable link in the chain. Same thing with people. You got to think real good and hard, even if you're attracted by it. As far as how's this? If you want to do it, maybe go on a legend trip or like on a tour, but actual investigations, I wouldn't recommend it for certain personalities because it's going to become a problem for them. And as far as the strong person, what you got to worry about is that you don't become overconfident.
Ah, I see.
Where you think nothing's going to get me. I've been doing all this time and I'm impervious and nobody's going to mess with me. Big mistake. Big mistake.
How do you and your team protect yourselves when you are going to go into an investigation into a location where there might be negative paranormal activity going on?
Well, ground yourself, prayers, whatever your belief system, prayers, following your instincts, and this belief that you are taken, that you're protected. Okay. In other words, that you do have power. You don't give your power over so easily. And like you said, this is even before you arrive. And Rob, when I was more active, I would tell people my first tip off, and like any investigator who's done this for a while will say this is true. Before I used to have an office in a detached garage in my house, and it had a frosted window. Sometimes I would be out there working because it was just quieter.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, that's where I would do my hypnosis for my clients out of there. And if I would see shadows on the other side of the frosted window, which by the way, that passageway where that frosted window was where I would put trash cans. There's nobody back there. Nobody would be crossing there, especially at night or even in the daytime. It was just an unused part of my yard. And once I would see a couple of those shadows walking across that frosted glass, guaranteed either I knew if I didn't know I was going to get the case within the most 72 hours, I would know about a case, or if I just gotten the case. And believe it or not, they will check out, if it's an intelligent haunting, they will go check out the investigators before they arrive
Holy cow.
at the site. Absolutely. They want to know who they're coming up against. And that, as a matter of fact, would be my first tip off. Number one, there's something there. And number two, and it's an intelligent haunting. Because they're coming to check me out.
By the way, do you know how to make holy water?
No.
No, it's
you know what? I'll tell you what.
No,
I'm
hold on
Catholic.
here. Hold on. You said no, and you kind of it's a joke. Okay, you boil the hell out of it.
Oh, well, okay. For a minute there, I was like, okay, the Catholic in me is going, wait a minute, I can't make holy water. What are you talking about?
You just boil the hell out of it. Stand by, Marlene. You and I have to take our final break. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about Marlene and her investigations, visit www.miamighostchronicles.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this very short break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. Wow, another 2 hours come and gone so fast here in the X Zone. After all, this is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard, Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight on the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM. And they're found on the AM dial anywhere in southern Ontario. Frequencies 1220 AM. And they also stream us at classic1220.ca.
CKTB never sleeps. Ghosts on your street, calling my name. Riding the airwaves, lost in the flame. In the silence of the mountains, where the ancient rivers flow, walks a seeker of the spirit, monk Yun Ro. Through the storms of human struggle and the chaos of our days, he lights the path before us with compassion, sacred blaze. From forgotten halls of wisdom to the questions of the soul, he speaks of inner balance and becoming truly whole. And tonight across the airwaves, the mysteries are shown with Rob McConnell guiding listeners on the X Zone. Welcome to the X Zone.
Marlene Pellicer is our special guest this hour. And Marlene, as I was saying during the break, thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you. But I have to ask you this. Where has been the most haunted, active, scary place that you and your team have ever investigated?
Oh, boy. That's a tough one. You know what? I'm going to tell you, it wasn't a place I investigated. It was a place I visited. It wasn't on an investigation, but it was the Moundsville State Prison in West Virginia. That is let's put it this way, without actually doing an official investigation, that place, it was like, oh my God, it already had a reputation like most prisons of being haunted, but it was like, I would need to do an investigation. And as far as, I one time did an investigation where this was an Australian family they were renting this house, a very large estate. They had, and what was really is that they collected antiques. I mean, the whole house was full of antiques, they were having a lot of weird stuff happen, and they were already thinking it's one of our items. By the way, they had like statues that were lifelike.
Oh
When
my
I mean
gosh.
antiques, turned out that somebody had placed a curse on the land meant towards the owner of the house who was renting it out to them. And they had so much phenomena there. And they had the kids there were already like in teenagers, late teenagers. They were having experiences, seeing things out in the yard, seeing things looking at them through the window. And I remember um, it was so severe that she was coming up to renew her lease. And I remember we told her, look, our if we're giving you advice, it would be do not stay here. Don't stay here. But she did, and I believe that soon after that, she got robbed. A bunch of other things happened. It was like, but you can't make, because in other words, we realized that what was going on there, there was layers. I'm not saying that maybe she did have things tied into the 2 floors of items, but the majority of it was something that had been buried on that land as a curse against the original owner.
Wow.
So yeah, it was like, man, this is, and like I said, we normally wouldn't give people the advice of moving. A lot of them did do that, by the way. A lot of people, this was their solution, especially if it was a rental. It was like, we're out of here.
But even though it's a rental and they say get out of here, isn't it possible that the entity or the spirit would attach themselves to the people who are scooting?
Oh, Rob, that they had that attachment from before. And believe me, I would always do a pre-interview on the phone, but then when I got there and I learned this many years, I would interview, let's say the adults, obviously, separately. Rob, you would hear stories that I would say, well, come on, I'm here to help you. When did you start? You would hear these stories that you realize it's not this place, it's you. And
Ah,
some of them sometimes have been involved in occult stuff, or they had some, like in other words, they knew in a way they suspected that it was that person. And believe it or not, sometimes even their spouse was not aware of what they might have been involved in. And that's why I would normally always question them separately, together, but separately, because a lot of truths would come out in that interview at that point.
what has been the strangest thing you have ever seen? For example, have you seen full-bodied apparitions?
I have, I've heard things, and one time, and by the way, this was not really it was like dusk. It was a bunch of us and we were sitting there and it was investigators and people involved in this, but it wasn't an actual investigation. And I remember we were all just, and you know how people, they don't turn on the light because it was light and then it gets dead and
Yep.
darker, but nobody's turned on the light. And I'm sitting on a sofa and I'm like the end of it and we're all talking and all of a sudden I looked at the girl sitting next to me. She had transformed. She looked like this old hag that I didn't jump out because it was like I was, because there was 4 of us like smushed into a sofa.
Hmm.
But I looked at her because my first instinct was, and like when you see in the movies that people close their eyes and like it's like, wait a minute, that's not possible. Is it because it's dark in here? And I turned around, I looked at her. And by the way, she was a pretty girl with blonde hair. And when I was looking at her, it was like, then later on, I ended up speaking to a good friend of mine. I said, look, this happened and I don't know what's going on. She goes, oh, you didn't know about her? Because I didn't know who that person was per se. I didn't know who she was. I said, no, what's going on? And she was telling me that apparently this person had some bad run-ins with some very dark activity. And that she was there, but they had told her not to come. And I was like, okay, well, whatever was there is still there. I had never had that happen to me before, Rob, where you look at a person and you're seeing something different than what's there. And I don't do that's not normal for me.
I don't think that would be normal for anybody, to be honest with you.
No,
Yeah.
that was like, and I didn't scream out because I'd be like, this lady's going to think like, what's wrong with her? And later on, I looked at her and it was like, what in the world? Yeah, she transformed. She actually transformed. She transformed into what was sitting right next to me.
How,
And
yeah. How did you Did she revert back to her original look?
Yeah, I mean, I closed my eyes. And I said, God, I'm seeing stuff. What is this? And I looked back at her again, and she was still like that. And I was like, okay. And I remember looking across at my friend who was sitting in a chair. She must have seen something on my face because I see her looking at me, like when somebody lifts their eyebrows, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I looked at her, like my eyes were real wide. And then I looked at her again, and then she was back. But I could tell she was looking at me like, what's wrong? I don't know what my face looked like, but I must have been so weirded. She could tell. And she must have been thinking, we're all just talking in this big circle, people talking just different things. And later on, because she was a smoker, I said, hey, don't you feel like smoking? She looked at me because I was always on her butt about smoking. She's like, okay. So I said, look, this happened. And she looked at me and she goes, you don't know? I go, what are you talking about? She goes, this is what's going on with that person. And I had no idea, Rob. None. What the background was on this person. Because that was the thing. When we worked in that research foundation, they would bring in different groups from different, and I was always a freelancer. So
Right.
I would join in with a lot of different groups, either when they were short a person or whatever. So sometimes you would work with some people a lot of times, and other times you would see some people once, and that was it. So that was, I didn't know about this person at all. But whatever it was, I'm going to tell you something. It was, for that, it was like, in other words, it was either a very strong possession, not even possess. Oh, let me not use that word. Something was trying to possess her. How's that? Whatever that was trying to possess her.
So what was the conclusion? How did you or your team or somebody else get rid of this entity that was trying to possess her?
Well, no, see, she wasn't one of our cases. It was like if a group of us are together of investigators,
I see.
and all of a sudden you realize, and I was like, okay. And I was saying, I didn't know what to, and my friend said, you know what, I can talk to the group that she belongs to, the leader, and say what happened. Because it was like, I don't, but she had herself had told me that the group that she belonged to, they were like, had already told her, look, maybe you should step back for a while. Apparently she had stuff going on in her house, but she was one of these people that wants to stay in there. And that's why I'm saying a lot of times there's certain people that shouldn't be involved in paranormal work. And I really don't know what her actual life history was. Maybe there's other things also that made her vulnerable. But yeah, so it was like, please don't tell her I said anything. The last thing I need is for her to transform and come after me.
Okay, I'll do my best. What advice would you give to someone who believes they're experiencing unexplained activity in their homes?
I would say number one, don't be so quick to think it's paranormal. Okay. Rule out all the normal stuff. Be brave about it. Number two, people give up the power of where they live very easily, Rob. They do. They're like, oh, it's a ghost. Oh my God. No. This is your home. This is where you live, whether it's a rental, you own it. You live with your family or what, in the garage. I don't care. This is you got to own it. Like, this is my place and you're not going to take it. And I would say pray. Do, if you want to, and I guess it depends if you want to put holy objects up. But in other words, don't become the lesser of whatever's going on there. Because sometimes if you are strong and when you own it, you dispel whatever there if something's trying to come in, or they will avoid you. But people, unfortunately, because of the paranormal shows, they become very oh my God, it's a ghost. It's more powerful than me, or something like that. It's like, no, that's not it. You can't scare yourself out of the place you live. In other words, where you live should be your sanctuary.
Exactly.
You should defend it as such.
We just got a few minutes left, Marlene. My final question is, what message would you like to leave with the X-Zone listeners around the world about the unseen world around us?
Well, I would say that a lot of times people make the mistake of thinking that only certain houses or places are haunted. And one of the things that you learn, yes, there are certain places that have, let's say if there's a ghost, they're attached to it for a lot of different reasons. But there is discarnates, or what they call free floaters, all around, Rob, all the time. Okay. So you could run into something where you least expect it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a haunted house.
Gotcha. Marlene, thank you so much again for joining us. Please don't be a stranger. As always, I look forward to talking to you and sharing the world of the paranormal with you people at the Miami Ghost Chronicles. So once again, thank you so much. Take care of yourself and stay out of trouble.
Of course, all the time. Take care, Rob.
Good night, Marlene. And Exonation, if you'd like to find out more about Marlene, please visit her website, www.miamighostchronicles.com. That's it for tonight. I'll be back on Monday, as once again we continue here in the X Zone from the CanCom Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM 1220 on the AM dial, and they stream us right around the world on classic1220.ca. So until Monday, always remember, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light. Good night, everyone.
Forgotten halls of wisdom to the questions of the soul. He speaks of inner balance